The headline resonates like a question echoing through the corridors of Nigeria's industrial labor space. Redeployment or victimization. At the heart of this tempest are engineers once employed by Dangote Petroleum Refinery. In recent months, these engineers, many of whom helped build and commission the facility, have found themselves issued new postings to remote and unfamiliar project sites within the broader Dangote Group. However, instead of acceptance, what came back was rejection. The objection is not only to the location or nature of the assignment, but to what they see as forced transfer masquerading as corporate reorganization. A move that they view as punitive, discriminatory, and possibly illegal. This story is about more than just job reassignment. It is about labor rights, unionization, corporate power, and whether redeployment is a legitimate business decision or a strategy to silence dissent. Samson Balogun is my name, and this is The Big Story on Dominion Television. The crisis began in September 2025 when engineers at the Dangote refinery, many reportedly members of or supporters of Pengasan, the Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association of Nigeria. They were dismissed in what management described as a part of an internal reorganization, citing alleged sabotage and operational risk. Pengasan, however, accused the company of mass transfers aimed at weakening union presence, arguing that the sacking violated workers' constitutional right to association. And in response, the pressures including national attention, union backlash, and a threatened strike that disrupted operations. So the federal government mediated. The result is that a directive that the disengaged staff be redeployed to other units within Dangote Group with assurances that there would be no loss of pay. In October, letters titled Offer of Trainee Engagement under the umbrella of Dangote Projects Limited were issued to affected engineers, assigning them to a variety of roles: coal mine projects in Benue, concrete road construction in Borno and Ebonyi, rice mills in Kebbi, Niger, and Sokoto, Zamfara, plus placement in sugar or cement subsidiaries. But many of the engineers refused the redeployment letters. Their reason? The letters often lacked verifiable addresses of where they were to report. Some of the states listed are widely regarded as a security compromised. For them, accepting such postings would amount to self-termination, a backdoor way to out staff without explicitly firing them. When they declined, the refinery responded not with a renewed negotiation, but with a wage freeze. October salaries were slashed. By November, pay was reportedly withheld entirely. So affected engineers and union leaders describe this as victimization, a clear punishment for exercising their rights and refusing to accept what they consider unsafe or unjust postings. On the other hand, Dangote management maintains that the exercise is standard redeployment under group operations, intended not as punishment, but as a reorganization to safeguard the refinery's integrity. They argue that ongoing sabotage and safety risks justified the overhaul, and that redeployment across the group is a business prerogative. What has followed is a tense stalemate. Engineers without pay, uncertain futures, a union calling for fairness, a corporate giant defending its decisions, and the broader Nigerian public watching, as this conflict carries a potential ripple effect for labor relations and energy stability across the country. This is The Big Story on Dominion Television. Joining me to examine this particular topic this morning is a senior editor with the Nigerian Tribune, Nwoko. Good to have you in the studio.
Good to be here. Good morning. Good morning, viewers.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
There's a lot to talk about. The back and forth between Dangote refineries and the sacked engineers has not left the front pages of the major newspapers in the last few months. What is your complete overview? With the latest decision, what exactly is going on between Dangote refineries? Does Dangote refineries, as a body, do they have the right, under the labor law, to tell these engineers to move to different sites, aside from the ones where they were originally employed?
Thank you once again. If we look at it from the broader perspective, from what is happening in Dangote and the whole other issues surrounding Dangote. One of the conclusions that come to my mind is, on knees lies the head that wears the crown, And the Dangote refinery seems to have taken over in terms of publicity and, let me say, awareness about the Dangote, what Dangote is doing. Dangote refinery has suddenly become the number one,
the center point
of everything about Dangote now. It's now everything on the front burner about Dangote is now Dangote refinery. And coming to the specifics of what is happening now and whether there are rights or no rights and so on, a whole lot is tied to it. The first is that what contract did they sign? I mean, the employees. What did the employer offer you? What did you take? What is your terms of employment? So all these are supposed to be made known to the general public for a proper analysis of what is going on now. But on the face value, the Nigerian labor laws, one of the things contained in Nigerian labor laws is that you are supposed to sign a contract after 3 months.
After 3 months.
So what did you sign? What did you tell Dangote you were going to be doing? And what did Dangote say, come and do for me? I am a reporter. I was employed to write news. And interestingly, in whatever way you may look at it, the letter you are given will always tell you, and sundry related assignments as may be deemed fit and so on. You happily accept it because the main thing you came for
was stated.
And you don't sometimes look at the other unstated things or other stated things that are not stated the way they may be properly interpreted. So those are a few of the things that need to be looked into. But the ding-dong, I think it's not healthy for both Dangote and the employees.
Okay, very quickly, let me ask you this question. The deployment of these engineers, was it a tactical dismissal, or it was just basically business decision by Dangote Group?
On the face value, it looks like a basic business decision. But if indeed the letters did not state a specific role you are going to play where they are posting you, and they don't have specific addresses of where they are going to, that's for me a tactical dismissal. It's as simple as that. I don't know how. No, there are no two ways to put it. If you are transferring me, when I was transferred from Port Harcourt as a correspondent back to the head office, they just wrote a single line. Then there was no need for any niceties. I didn't receive such. They just said you have been. In fact, mine was not transfer. It was recall. The letter said I have been recalled to the head office, that I should resume. The letter came on a Saturday and I was to resume on Monday. And I resumed on Monday. And they were all surprised. I said, why are you surprised? You wrote this letter and now I'm here and you are still surprised again. So they said they thought I was going to resign. I said, well, it's not time for me to resign yet. And I didn't resign. So mine was clearly stated from Port Harcourt, where I was as Rivers State correspondent of the Nigerian Tribune, back to the head office. And when I came to the head office, I resumed my roles on the politics desk and I continued straight. I knew where I was and where I was going, Now, when I was transferred to Anambra State, I was transferred to go and open an Anambra State office, specific role, a report for the Nigerian Tribune there, specific role, and by reporting, it has a whole lot attached to it. Now, open the office, reports from there, and increase the sales and the presence of the Nigerian Tribune in Anambra State. Fine. Specific rules. So, what am I going to Yobe to do? What am I going to Borno to do? What am I going to Adamawa to do? If I am domiciled here as perhaps an engineer in the refinery who has a job in the refinery, is there a refinery I'm going to work on at that place? Are we opening another refinery at those places? What am I going to those places to do? What are the conditions upon which I am going to resume in those places? Without all these things being stated, or at least a faint idea of what is happening, then I think it's a tactical dismissal.
Okay, at what point can one consider redeployment to be victimization in corporate labor practice?
Now, some of the things that have been stated here points to that. If indeed, because I haven't seen but they allege that there are no specific addresses where they are to resume. What does that tell you? So they should just perhaps fly to or drive to those states, and then when you get there, go to any Dangote office and say, okay, but we know that Dangote is a conglomerate, and they are from the refinery. So which other engineering practice are they going to do in related field in a place like Borno, for instance? So it tells you that there is something beneath the entire gamut of redeployment, reassignment, corporate governance, and so on and so forth. So for me, if a letter like that comes, I mean, it's only normal that you just give a notice. And again, they did not say how they are to move. By that I mean, are they moving immediately? One of my own occasions, I was to move immediately. So there's no time to even prepare your family and say, hey, gentlemen, I've been transferred and I'm moving at so time. So you walk towards it and prepare yourself towards that. But some of them are just these like a military deployment. Even military deployment, they will tell you if you are going on a mission, they will tell you that you are to resume at so time. They'll give you a minimum of 48 to 72 hours to be able to prepare yourself and get yourself ready for some of these things. So a proper analysis of what the employees are saying will show that the employer is telling them to go.
I was about to ask you this question about how usual it is for engineers at a refinery to be transferred or redeployed to rice mills, coal mines. What similarity do they have?
It's a very tricky case. You know, the similarities way beyond being an engineer. If you are an engineer and you are told to go to a rice mill from a refinery, you are being transferred from the kitchen to perhaps the burrow pit. They are very different. They are wide apart. Yes, your general knowledge of engineering would say, okay, you have done this, you have done that. But hey, the specifics, the practice, which from where you are lifted, makes it a world of difference. If someone studied mechanical engineering now, has an engineering degree registered by the Nigerian Society of Engineers, and is also registered by a current Council of Registration of Engineers in Nigeria, and now you are a mechanical engineer, and someone brings a contract of a civil engineer to you, you will kindly advise the person to look for a civil engineer because that's not your field. So there is a difference. If you transfer a petroleum engineer or someone in a related field, a geologist,
to a coal mine, and
so on and so forth, to a rice mill, or to it's funny, you know. To me, it's you know, transfer them to such places, and when you do that, you now tell them to do what? You know, begin to learn how to mine coal. A petroleum engineer does not even have to be a rig engineer. They don't have to be people who are rigging. They don't have to be those who are on the oil rig. By oil rig, I mean you will have to be somewhere where some of these things are taking place. You have to be it could be offshore. You could be onshore. You could be doing geo-analysis and all those things, you know. But when it doesn't happen that you are kept within the field where you are competent, then it means that your competence and competency are no longer useful for your employer. So it's for you to just move.
Okay, very quickly, let's talk about unionization, because that is one of the basis of why this problem is actually there in the first place. The issue of Pengasan, Dangote Refinery, and the federal government. When the issue started, the federal government mediated, and then there was more or less like a truce that was reached. But eventually, Dangote refinery stood on its ground and said, look, I'm not going to... They mentioned something like sabotage. Do you think Dangote should retain engineers like that, who they know one way or the other that they were going to sabotage their efforts?
As a wise employer, no. You cannot retain...
because it happened before. Dangote refinery claimed there was a sabotage.
Yes, and it's still one of the issues on the table for Dangote. Now, in some other private establishments, because first we have to even establish, or rather realize, remember that Dangote is a private establishment, and it has rules, in-house rules, guiding employees. I know some media houses where there is no union. So if you are going in there, you are going in there with your eyes open that I cannot be a union member.
Belong to any
I cannot belong to any union in this media house. I cannot belong to a union in this place or in that place. So you are going into that place with your eyes open. But Pengasan, Nupeng, and all these petroleum unions have assumed a life of their own, and I think they are still flowing from those things they did during the military era, for which Nigerians fell in love with them, you know. But now that era is gone. We are now in a democracy, and in a democracy it is not easy for you to just say it and then so it. I mean, you can't just give an order.
There are processes.
There are processes. And these processes are very important to the corporate governance of whatever organization to which you belong to. So if I am employing and I say, look, I don't want an involvement in this, it is going to be very difficult. Dangote accused Pengasan that, look, it is because of the dues they collect, the money they are after, and these people are sabotaging our investment. So if this is happening and it is affecting the production and the processes of the company, it is for the company to say, look, it is either I leave these people to continue like this or I ruin my business. So he has that decision to make. That said, the union also has a way through which it can help by giving guidance. But they don't seem to have come on any friendly level at all. They started all these things by telling us, because I remember that there were times they told us that there was too much sulfur in Dangote's products, and that the products were substandard and things like that. But Dangote has to, you know, you remember they
put it to test.
Put all these things to test and say, come, let's test the ones we are importing and the ones we are, you know. So that tells you that at the very basis, at the foundational level, there was no love lost. They had there was disequilibrium in their relationship. I don't want to say there was a clash. Now, it has got to a level where Dangote has been able to identify those
where the problem is coming from,
who are behind the problem, and say, okay, if this is what I'm going to, I don't mind paying you off so that I'll retain my business. Because this business, this investment we are talking about runs into tens of billions of dollars. So it is for the worker to decide to face his or her career. We used to have Nubifie, but you know many young people don't know Nubifie again. National Union of Banks, Insurance Companies, and Financial Institutions. Those things don't exist again. Banks used to go on strike, bank workers. But they don't have all these things again because they have to say, okay, this is a private thing, especially after the deregulation of the banking sector. Those unions died. So if they deregulate the petroleum industry and allow people to build more refineries, Nupeng and Pengasan are going to die. Except if you have something like the tanker drivers union, who decide to like, okay, this is how we are going to govern ourselves. But if the petroleum investor is rich enough to employ and buy his own tankers and decide not to be a member of the tanker,
isn't that what some of the things Dangote was trying to do?
Exactly. And
at the point he said they bought 4,000 trucks.
Yes, and what I think is that those unions are kicking because they are on their way out. This sector of our national economy has been deregulated. So they are foreseeing
the end.
The end. So they have to kick And in kicking, the operators themselves have to find ways
to fight back.
To fight, not just fight back, you have to control the fighting while you still run your business. So this is a very tough battle. And I'm sure in a few months, maybe max 6 months, we are going to get ahead.
Is Dangote's business being deliberately targeted?
From the look of things, I will say yes. Because we've read a lot of materials that make it look like Dangote is not doing what he should do. Some are even saying that he is selling. In fact, there was a time his products were targeted. And if you target the products, that means you are targeting the company. Remember, Dangote only started just last, let's say early this year. Because when they inaugurated the Dangote refinery, it took about 3 months.
3 or 4 months.
Or 4 months. So I was of the opinion then that no.
It was said to be October. From October it moved to November, and from November moved to December.
It's actually August to October and so on and so forth. But now the products are here and we have it. Now the man who owns the place says, if I leave these unions to operate the way they are going to ruin my business. So I have to fight back. And that is why some businesses don't allow unions. Banks, I just said, are an example. You don't go to a bank now and say, I'm going to lead a union and things like that. It doesn't happen anymore. We no longer have that. It's coming to the petroleum industry. And for me, it's more like the kicks of, I don't want to say a dying horse, because the unions still have the government at the jugular. If the government relinquishes their refineries to private operators, we are not going to have these unions anymore. It's something we can see based on what has happened in
other industries.
That's what it is. So the government is still the one sustaining some of these. Because I learned that they pay salaries in Kaduna refinery,
right,
which does not produce anything. I learned, we read it, we saw it, we saw the fanfare, what happened in Port Harcourt refinery, we saw what happened in Warri refinery. When Port Harcourt was said to have started production, I called one of my friends who lives in Eleme. The guy said, oh boy, I beg, leave me, I don't want, leave me out of this. He said, if Port Harcourt refinery function, he said, even the blind go see. Because you get a hear movement and everything. So that tells you that government is still sustaining the unions with all that goes into it. And at the end of the day, when the regulation eventually takes place, these unions are no longer going to be relevant.
How long will it take for Dangote refinery to win this battle?
It is going to, for me, I look at a situation in which...
Is the government also complicit? Are they part of the problem?
Well, government creates the impression that it's standing askance on this. Now, there are two legs to your questions now. Is Dangote, how long it's going to take Dangote to win? With his being resolute, with how resolute he is now, I don't think it will take long. In another 2-3 months, if your company says, this is what I want you to do for me, and you refuse to do it, it's like saying, I quit. So it's either you quit or you do what you are told to do. It's a private employee, a private enterprise. Yes, the law says you have to sign a contract, you have rights to your wages and all these things, but there are still
the moment
other
you are
things.
not rendering the service.
If you are no longer relevant in the system, it's either you quit or they kick you out. That is one. Then if government is tacitly supporting what is going on, or tacitly injecting some bile in the whole thing, I think from what the NNPC did at the outset of Dangote, you will want to agree. Because they told us that the NNPCL has become a private enterprise. But from all you could see, it is still held
by the government,
tightly by the government. And if it is the government that appoints the group managing director and so on and so forth, then, and the board, then it is the government. So if NNPC speaks, it is the government, our petroleum arm of the government that is speaking. Who is the Minister of Petroleum?
That's the president.
Okay. So that tells you what goes on in there. However, with what we see now as deregulation and what is happening, I am of the opinion that it may not take as long as we are looking at before these things come under proper control.
Some are saying that they expect the federal government of Nigeria to be on the side of Dangote refinery because they have a stake in the refinery. But why are they not taking an open stand?
It's tricky, you know. If government has a stake in the refinery, then you and I have a stake in the refinery also. What it means is that our money was invested in that refinery, and we should make it work because it's already showing signs of helping the economy, you know. Now, there is this fear that has been held that it's going to become a very super monopoly and things like that. But again, what is government doing to tackle that? Is it by killing the baby, throwing away the baby with the bathwater? No. You have to find structural ways through which you can do these things. How? Allow other people to come into the business. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, your stake is huge in this business. Exert the powers you have on it. It is Dangote alone that speaks about this refinery. Nigerians are not saying this is our stake. This is how much the CBN invested in this on behalf of Nigeria. So if that is the case, then why are we wasting our money if we cannot check? It's just like being in a cooperative society. If you belong in a cooperative society and you don't attend meetings, you cannot ask questions when decisions are taken because you failed to play your role. So if we fail to play our role in helping Dangote to stabilize, we may not have the wherewithal to call Dangote to question when the time comes.
Some have feared monopolization of the petroleum industry by Dangote refinery, just like some other industries. But then there are some other people who have invested, even there are other modular refineries across the country that are functioning. And also the chairman of Boa Group, Abdulsamad Durabi, is also said to be building his own refinery in Akwa Ibom. So where is the fear of a monopolization of the industry coming from? Is this just an agenda against the Dangote Group?
That's also part of the thinking. If the government allows this to happen, if the government allows forces to derail Dangote, then there will be fear of what is coming in Eket by BUA Group, and then more foreign investors may be wary of coming to the country to do business. Because as it is, the business environment, we are managing the business environment in terms of insecurity and a few other things. However, the steps the government is taking sometimes call to question their real intent in making Dangote refinery what it should be truly. But the overall thinking, Dangote is a private enterprise with government investment, which nobody talks about. We no longer even think about the fact that Nigeria invested billions of dollars in the refinery. You know, so it then means that we are we are more concerned about what certain individuals benefit rather than the greater good of the country, for which we think Dangote was supported by the government. So in that case, that brings us back to the area of controlled gray areas in the petroleum industry. Areas they don't, you hear so many things about the petroleum industry, but you can't understand. And this has to be looked into. We have to throw more light in these areas. We have to ask questions, and we have to get answers to those questions. They are very, very important.
Now, does this dispute expose the gap when it comes to labor disputes and mediation in the country?
Yeah, it does. In fact, in a very unique way, it is pointing us to the insincerity of the operators of the industry. It's a it's a very interesting atmosphere, what is going on there. You have a lot of agencies in the petroleum industry. What are those agencies doing? They don't have a refinery of their own. They don't have distribution networks. Now the NNPC has a competitor, and the competitor is competent, and yet it has a lot of what we call gbas on the street. So why will government not say, okay, two of you come together, lay your cards on the table, play the game according to the rule, so that we can move on for the sake of Nigerians. So where is the stake of Nigerians in all of this? If the NNPC is competent, then Dangote shouldn't have been a problem. Because Dangote will now struggle to make sure that its competence, its productivity will be striving to achieve the level, attain the level of NNPC. But it is the other way around. It is the NNPC, which is a public corporation, which has been registered on the stock exchange, that is now struggling to meet up with Dangote. And when Dangote says, okay, my price is 8 naira, NNPC will say, yes, my price too is 8 naira. So they have relinquished their leadership, their experience, all the expertise to Dangote. So that tells you that there is something wrong in the administration of that industry.
Okay, lastly, before we go, does this crisis have the potential to spark what you would call a wider labor showdown in the petroleum industry in the future?
It may not. Because for me, I want to see, or rather, I am seeing an end to a whole lot of things that concern unionism in the petroleum industry. And when they, look, I remember when firms like Mobil, major oil companies, they don't have all these unions, except when they are forced into doing some of this. There was a time they will picket some of these companies and they will declare a force majeure and shut down temporarily. But it doesn't go far, because the people who have formed these unions, they have the backing of the government in a way. You know, now that it is now no longer an FOC, foreign oil company, it is now an LOC, local oil company, the dynamics have changed. Somebody who understands the local politics of this place, and that somebody is now in the saddle. And again, the NNPC, which was a public enterprise, is now a private, a limited liability company. And by that, it means that it is governed by the same corporate rules that governs the other establishments like banks and so on. So they have to force them to conform with those rules. So what it means is that in the larger picture, in the bigger picture, when the time comes, these unions will no longer be relevant. And when their relevance is to an extent whittled, we will now all rely on the Constitution, which allows us to form groups, and then we will begin to have some new types of thinking in the oil industry of Nigeria. That's what I think.
Sam Nwoko, thank you for joining us on the show this morning.
Thank you very much.
It's been an eye-opening session with you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. All right, as the dust settles, or perhaps more accurately, continues to swirl, one thing is clear. This is more than a personal rearrangement. It is a test of corporate responsibility, union strength, and labor rights under pressure. Will the deployment under the guise of reorganization be accepted at the cost of workers' safety and dignity? That's a big question. Or will these engineers stand prompt a re-examination of how multinational conglomerates in Nigeria treat their workforce, especially those who dare to unionize? The decision taken now by both sides will send a signal, either reaffirming the values of fair labor practices and due process, or reinforcing a precedent of coercive transfers and silent purges. For the engineers, the union, and for every Nigerian worker out there that is watching today, the stakes could not be higher. Samson Balogun is my name. Up next is Trend Watch. Let's go on a short break. We'll be back.